in the world we live in, it seems silly to think like, oh, as long as we show people the science, they'll respond favorably. Like science is kind of
even though it took us 50 years in the U.S. to take lead out of gasoline.
It's almost literally the opposite.
Yeah, we'd like to think it is the case, but it's not the case. Science always has a long fight.
Yeah. And have you found that? Have you found that it's going to be, that it has been a tough fight, or are you finding that you're part of the sea change of, the catalyst that's helping to push this stuff forward and through, legalization, et cetera? What's been your how long have you guys been in business, and what has been your experience in the last, however long you've been doing this?
But we've been in business for approaching 3 years. So I feel like some days I think to myself, like we're completely in the meat grinder. We're trying to convince people that are unconvincible. And then there's other days where I think to myself, like, oh my God, I'm actually having a really, really positive impact with respect to educating policymakers and advocating for meaningless reform. I think the challenge to me is like most that I've encountered is 3 years ago when I started this, cannabis was a fringe issue. Like a politician or a scientist didn't have to have an opinion. They could say like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. You can't do that anymore. Republican, Democrat, whatever, you have to have sort of a cannabis talking point now because it's so mainstream. So
Right.
Even that in and of itself is a victory, even though I don't think we're where we need to be. But it's been an absolute meat grind of a process, just like trying to convince. The funny thing is like trying to convince people that research and science around cannabis is good. It's like if you're against it, great. Maybe the research shows that it's bad. If you're for it, maybe the research shows that it's good. But it's hard to argue that science that could help people is like not necessary. But that's what I've found. Right?
I mean, we're trying to convince our grandparents of things. That's the dynamic we're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate truth.
We're beating their parents' perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are still people alive today who watched Reefer Madness the first time it came out, and these folks are still legislating in Washington. And, there are going to be those folks like Jeff Sessions who are just, they come from the South, they come from their conservative roots, they come from being entrenched in their...
Hey now, Sean. Hey now.
Hey,
What'd you say about Jesus?
I understand, sir, that you are from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a very red state, and we are broadcasting just north of Charlotte, as a matter of fact, in a very red state, and I'm sure the law enforcement folks are like, are they smoking on the camera?
Yes.
Like, let's get in there and bust them.